right. Hello, everyone. I can see some folks coming onto the broadcast right now. Hope you're all doing well. We'll get started in just a moment here. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat, say hello, where you're from. Awesome. All right. Let's get started. So, hi, everybody. My name is Georgia Gleason. I'm Partnerships Associate at Tech Talent Project. We're really excited that you're all here. We're about to see some real world examples of how to have a real impact in government as a technologist. The lightning talk format we're using today means that we'll see some super short and sweet presentations from our three awesome speakers, and then we'll open it up to questions from everyone. So as you have questions, please put them in the chat, and my colleague Alex will be keeping track, and we'll get those answered a little bit later. So we have a tight schedule, so I'm going to kick things off and get us going here. So our first lightning talk will be given by Grace Simrall, who served as the Chief of Civic Innovation and Technology of Louisville Metro Government from 2016 to 2023. Under her leadership, the city has been the most widely recognized civic innovation team in the country, including awards in Central for Digital Government, Most Innovative City, Bloomberg Philanthropies Mayor's Challenge Champion City, Microsoft Future of Work Initiative, and What Works City's Platinum Certification status. So prior to that role, Simrall served as Executive Director of Innovation at Care Innovations, a joint venture between Intel and GE Healthcare, where she was responsible for the company's innovation and analytics initiatives. In 2010, she founded Eyeglass Analytics, a startup focused on delivering data management and analytics solutions in the healthcare technology space. Over to you, Grace.
Thank you so much, Georgia. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I'm really excited to be here talking to you all about a breakthrough project, which is the Air Louisville project. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Louisville, Kentucky, we are the largest city in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We have about 750,000 residents spread over 400 square miles, and just making sure that you all know where we are, because I want to talk about air quality. Now, I think this is really top of mind to everybody because of the Canadian wildfires, but Louisville historically has suffered from air quality challenges, and there's a number of reasons for that. The first is that we sit in the Ohio River Valley, number one. So topographically, we have this depression, and that causes air to be trapped in our airshed. Number two, we burn coal for our energy sources. And number three, we love to drive vehicles, and our single passenger vehicle mileage is really high. So when you combine all those things together, we have significant challenges around air quality. What did we do about it? As a civic innovation team, we thought we should, in fact, try and figure out, is air quality bad overall? Is it evenly bad? By gut feel, you'd say probably not. There probably are hot spots. And like most people, this was in 2014, we thought, let's try and measure this. We had EPA grade monitoring stations that were spread throughout 7 locations in the city, but the way they're designed, even though they're very accurate, they only measure a particular kind of air pollution species. And so that really wasn't going to work in giving us hyperlocal information. Then we tried using low-cost air quality monitoring solutions and discovered, again, at least in 2014, the quality of data that we were getting from these devices wasn't up to snuff. Now, what I want to stress about this story is that a lot of times when people hear about the Air Louisville story, they think it was an overnight success. And I just could not stress that it was not the case. We iterated, we tried things, we made sure to learn a lot from each iteration, and we used low-cost methods to do so. But our big breakthrough moment was when we realized maybe instead of trying to measure things directly, we should measure where and when people were having asthma attacks, because that would be a really good indicator that our residents' quality of life was being impacted negatively. Again, back to some of these knock-on effects of having poor air quality. We have some of the highest rates of people who have asthma, COPD, and other sort of respiratory challenges in the city. And so we thought, why don't we try and measure this indirectly by using a novel device, which is we went with Propeller Health. They have a GPS-enabled cap that sits on a rescue and controller medication. But that did mean that there was a really critical piece of this. We would need public buy-in. We wanted to do this as an opt-in project. And when you start these kind of projects, you think, well, how much citizen engagement are we actually going to get? Most healthcare companies, when they're trying to do these projects, would be thrilled to have 200 or 300 people participate. And the punchline is that when we asked our residents to be citizen scientists and opt in, we had over 1,000 residents enrolled. And we were able to make sure that they were well represented through every single demographic in our city. So neighborhood, race, disease severity, gender, the age. This was all covered in our citizen scientist population. And we learned a lot from this project. So I think one of the most interesting things about it is that there were hotspots. We definitely confirmed some things we knew. So if you live, work, play near what are called point sources of air pollution, and that is industrial sites, you're definitely going to see a significant increase in rescue inhaler usage. And that's represented by that big dot to the left of the screen. What was super surprising to us was just how oversized the effects of living near mobile sources of air pollution. So this is vehicle congestion. It was just as strong a signal. You are going to have as many asthma attacks and need to use your rescue inhaler when you live, work, play near vehicle congestion. And so with this information, we were actually able to institute new policies. We had some spin-off projects that are in fact underway, understanding and discovering the role of mature trees and shrubs, so green spaces, in both physically and naturally through again geo and biological chemical processes cleaning the air. But also significant work around traffic congestion mitigation. And one of the most interesting things about this project has been telling residents about it. So when you share with them that vehicle congestion is a problem, and you tell them one of the hotspots is along a traffic corridor called Shelbyville Road, there's always this moment where their eyes light up and they say, of course, it's just so congested. So by doing things like traffic retimings and again, greening the spaces along those corridors, we've been able to have some significant impact. I think the last thing I want to stress is that we couldn't do this alone. It really needed to be a public-private partnership. The city knew and deeply understood the problem that was facing residents, but we didn't necessarily have the solutions. And it wouldn't have made sense for us to do the basic research to create those solutions. Instead, we decided to partner with the private sector and employ novel technologies to be able to measure and then respond to our measurements. That's number one. Number two, I think it was really fantastic that the residents directly benefited. When we asked them, why participate? Why did over 1,000 of you participate? The overwhelming response was because I want to make our community a better place. And it was just amazing that we had so many residents who felt positively about it. Now, I think one of the most unanticipated knock-on effects was that most of our resident citizen scientist participants had what's called uncontrolled asthma attacks. So they used their rescue inhalers significantly. As there isn't such a great way of diagnosing uncontrolled, but the rule of thumb is that it's about more than once every 2 weeks. And we had residents who were using it 7-8 times a day. They saw significant improvement in their own control of asthma through this project, which meant that even residents who weren't necessarily participating were having benefits from healthier air. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Georgia.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Grace. I thought that was really great that you all focused on a diverse population and representation of citizen scientists. That's so important. So amazing. We'll take questions at the end. A reminder, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat. And we're going to shift to our next presenter, our next lightning talk. So our next presenter will be Pooja Shah, and she's sharing an example from the federal space. Pooja is a senior advisor for policy implementation at the White House Domestic Policy Council and the U.S. Digital Service. She has led cross-functional delivery teams at the intersection of policy priorities and agency implementation, including federal child care assistance, student debt relief, and improving the asylum system. Prior to joining the federal government, Pooja spent around 10 years in the health technology industry, most recently as a director of product management at Flatiron Health. She holds a BS from Columbia University and an MBA from Wharton Business School. And over to you, Pooja.
Thank you, Georgia. Excited to have the opportunity to speak to all of you today about some work I did with the administration to reduce the burden on families that are seeking childcare assistance. Before diving in, just a little bit of background about what the child care assistance benefit is. This is a benefit for families that are low income, that need, daycare, childcare to find a job, go to work and go to school, really all the things that you need so you can support your family. Of note, like many of the social safety net programs, this program is federally funded, but it's state and locality administered. So that means that every state, territory, tribal nation administers the program a little bit differently based on some federal guidance. So for those of you in the room that are thinking about state government opportunities, this project made very real for me how real federalism is and how much of the real action actually happens at the state level. So what was our goal? We were brought in to partner with the Administration for Children and Families to understand how to make processes, less confusing and less burdensome for families. So that was our overall goal. Families are in need, they need to go to work, they need to go to school. How can we make it so they don't have to go through mountains and mountains of paperwork in order to get the benefit if they're eligible? In terms of figuring out where to start with tackling this challenge, rather than kind of starting in a vacuum and picking solutions, we decided to take human-centered design approach best practices and started by speaking directly with families that are using the applications in different states trying to get childcare, as well as the state staff that are building and reviewing these applications, to the point that this is a state administered program like many of the social safety net benefits. So that was a really critical audience here. So I'll summarize what we learned in doing this research to figure out how to address the problem with a quote from Jen heard from earlier today, who will state this far better than I will. So I'm just going to full on steal her quote. And really what we heard during that process of speaking with families, speaking with state staffs about how can we make this process better for everyone, is that it's really not just about putting up an application online or doing technology modernization. That's really an important piece of it, but all of that is kind of useless without the policy and process simplification that needs to go into putting a better product online. So if you have a really confusing paper application right now, and I'm a family that has to fill it out and I can't tell, you're asking for my income, what are you defining as income? You're asking for my household. If I'm a single parent that's living with a child and a roommate, does my roommate count as part of the household? All of those things were often not clear, both to families and to state staff. And it was really important to partner with the experts at the Administration for Children and Families to get clarity on what is the true policy and process requirements in order to make that as an artifact that presents a better experience for families that really need this benefit in order to go to work and go to school. So coming out of that research, and kind of coming to that realization about what's actually needed to make this a more successful experience for states and families, we put on our hats of what the federal government was uniquely positioned to do for the state administered work with the Administration for Children and Families to put forth a resource called Creating a Family-Friendly Child Care Assistance Application that had two pieces. It had just real plain language clarity about some of those questions that we heard that were really unclear to people that were trying to complete and trying to review applications about what counts as income, what counts as family size, how many pay stubs do you need, do you really need a hard copy birth certificate, all those kinds of things, getting in plain language clarity what is federally allowed. And then we had kind of an artifact of that policy and process, artifact of those policy guidelines that were a model application that I'll show in a minute. But this was a real opportunity, a real example from the federal government of something that was a success and an opportunity to support both the families and the states in streamlining their applications. And you can see this quote here from the leadership there. So again, the application was kind of the artifact of the underlying work to improve the streamline and understand the art of what's possible under the current policies and put forward a sample model application. And what we really tried to do was make the resource that we created modular. So, you know, if anybody's ever been in the state government environment, you're always resource constrained. You're always trying to figure out how you can do more with less. And so we designed it so that you don't necessarily have to, everything that's in there, here's the art of what's possible. You can take some of it, you can take all of it, and you can use that to adopt your state policies and processes. And use that in how you're developing your applications to ultimately streamline this process for families.
I will just close by noting that, you know, we do this for childcare.
This challenges exist across the social safety net. So programs like SNAP, WIC, TANF, Medicaid, they all follow the same model of being federally funded, but state and locality administered. And oftentimes it's challenging, and you're sitting in the federal seat, you know, there's a problem and you're trying to figure out how you can best support states in delivering what they need and want to for the public. And one of the things we've been excited to hear about, in addition to hearing from states about how this resource will benefit them in streamlining their childcare applications, is hearing from some of our federal and state colleagues that this is a great example of how guidance can be put out to states for other similar social safety net programs that are facing similar challenges, and that this could be a model in thinking about how to streamline and make very clear what is and isn't allowed federally. So with that, I will stop. I'm happy to take questions later, and back to you, Georgia.
Thank you, Pooja. That was awesome. I love that example, and I appreciate your emphasis on the potential of work like this being kind of transferable across the different levels of government. You know, I hope you can see how your contributions in government to building products and building applications like this can have impact that spans a lot of people throughout the public. So thank you so much, Pooja. Thanks again. And let's transition to our next presenter. Our next presenter will be Stephanie Franklin. And Stephanie is the Director of Analytics for School Programs at the Texas Education Agency. The TEA is the state government agency that oversees primary and secondary public education in Texas. And prior to TEA, Stephanie worked as a management consultant with Boston Consulting Group, where she helped to build data science tools and improve operational efficiency for retail, travel, and tourism, and public sector clients. She has an undergraduate degree in the social sciences and recently obtained a master's in business analytics from MIT. Over to you, Stephanie.
Thank you. And I'll say, while I'm getting my slides up here, I think it is perfect that I am following Pooja, because what I'm going to be talking about here is implementing childcare assistance at the state level. And so, yeah, happy to be providing kind of that downstream perspective on how all of this work translates to the end user. So I will pull up my screen here. And I wanted to actually start off with just like a brief intro to my career trajectory to date, because I'm actually a little bit newer to working in government. So I wanted to provide that color and kind of how I got to the role that I'm at right now. So I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area originally. I studied the social sciences in undergrad, and I've always had a passion for public service. But I was one of those people who came out of undergrad still not really knowing exactly what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I went into management consulting, which is a great place to be if you want to try a little bit of everything. And I learned a ton working on projects for a range of clients. And the consulting world is also where I discovered my passion for data science. As time went on, I got more and more involved in more data-heavy technical projects, such as creating a digital twin simulator for airline operations or forecasting demand for a sporting goods retailer. And I eventually decided to go back to school to get a master's in data science. So I love all things data. At my core, I am a math nerd who loves solving puzzles. But I've ultimately always known that I wanted my career to be in service of a mission that I am passionate about. So coming out of grad school, I decided to work for the Texas Education Agency, where I get to combine my two passions for analytics and for public service. We are at a critical juncture right now in K-12 education in Texas. I really can't overstate enough the importance of the work that all of my colleagues are doing right now to try to reverse pandemic learning loss. You can see on the graph on the right here, the pandemic essentially erased years of progress and growth in student outcomes. And so we are doing a lot of really great work. We are slowly trying to come back and regain that progress, but we still have a long ways to go. And it really is, this was my motivation for coming to TEA in the fall of 2021. And it really grounds the importance of the work that we are trying to do across the agency right now. So my official title is Director of Analytics for School Programs, and my job in a nutshell is to find opportunities to use data to improve outcomes for kids. I look across all of our program areas and I propose projects that would allow our program teams to make more data-informed decisions. And then I get to work with my amazing team of data analysts and our fantastic program teams to conduct the analysis and communicate our findings. So like I said, we're going to be talking about childcare assistance at the state level. And so the example project that I wanted to talk through is our work with public pre-K. So in Texas, 3 and 4-year-olds who meet certain eligibility criteria, such as children from low-income families, English learners, children in foster care, etc., can enroll in tuition-free public pre-K. However, in practice, only a fraction of the families who are eligible actually enroll. And so our early childhood education team has a goal of ensuring as many children as possible are enrolling in a high-quality childcare service. This is a uniquely challenging data exercise because we have data on the children who enroll, but we don't have data on the children who don't. So we are essentially doing a demographic forecasting analysis where we don't have the true correct answer that we can use to train our models. So as a result, we have to do lots of what I think is really interesting data analysis, which I won't go into detail on here, but which my analytics brain loves to geek out on. So this includes, we try to translate our first grade population where we do have good data because first grade enrollment is required into a pre-K population from 2 years prior to try to get that true outcome variable for our estimates. We also use a Bayesian spatiotemporal model to model relationships and trends from neighboring districts. And then we use data from other service providers, such as Head Start and the Texas Workforce Commission, to try to understand which students are being served by other high-quality childcare services so that we can kind of remove them from our estimates of our gaps because we know those children are being taken care of by something else that is high quality. Ultimately, then, we arrive at district-level predictions of the unserved eligible population, which we then translate into a giant spreadsheet that we share with our early childhood specialists. They then use this data to reach out to districts to districts that have the largest opportunities to serve additional students, to share the results of our analysis and to offer them support in enrolling additional students. So those calls are underway right now, and the team is on track for their goal of reaching out to 250 districts this year. And we don't have the data in yet on hopefully how enrollment will increase for the next year, but we have anecdotally heard from the team that those conversations are going really well and that districts are grateful to have these resources available to them. And I think another really cool impact of this work has just been watching the early childhood program team get increasingly comfortable with data as we've gone through this exercise. I really believe that to do good data work, you also have to communicate effectively. And it's been really cool kind of watching them communicate out to the field what confidence intervals mean and what that means for, how much, like what the upper bound and the lower bound of our analysis is. and got to attend a really cool presentation at our annual retreat last year where the early childhood team was kind of presenting out, really owning this work themselves, and really talking about how it's helped them work data into their day-to-day operations in a way that they hadn't really felt comfortable doing before. So that's been another really cool side benefit of this analysis. And ultimately, I'll say it's data work and technology work in government is definitely hard. It took a long time to get approvals for our data sharing in place. It takes time and a lot of effort to push through some of the roadblocks sometimes. But ultimately, what motivates me is really the end impact and the fact that I can see that through line between what we're doing and what that hopefully at the end of the day means for kids. And I've been so impressed by how outcomes oriented all of my colleagues at TEA are, and the fact that really folks have come to TEA because they want to help kids, and it really shows. And so I'll say the more folks like you who come to work in government, the more we can bring that outcomes orientation to do strong data work going forward.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's so great to hear from all these folks at these different levels of government. And that was the perfect order of events to jump from one childcare assistance example to the next. So I really like how the work that you're doing and that you did made your team more comfortable with data. I think that's so fantastic that they felt empowered to kind of harness it themselves. So let's jump to questions. I do have one that I kind of just want to start with for the three of you. I think lots of folks on the call and who are registered today and job seekers are going to be transitioning into government for the first time. And I know that you all have experienced that. Do you have, the first piece of advice that comes to your mind around coming in for the first time?
I think I just can't overstate how important it is to build relationships. And you hear that a lot, but I don't know, for me, at least when I came in, I just did not appreciate how important that would be. Especially if you're pushing a new initiative that will require some funding. Being able to not be asking for money at the same time you're building a relationship is really important. So just being mindful of the fact that that in fact most people working in government are there for the right reasons. They're there because they want to deliver the best kind of benefits and services to the residents you serve. So keep that in mind, build relationships, and then you can do really interesting things that I don't think anyone thought was possible. I mean, every single talk illustrated something I think people probably aren't aware that is happening at all levels of government. So where else can you do such cool work?
Yeah, I would add, I think a lot is made of the differences between government and private sector. And yes, there are differences, but the work is the work, and there's a lot of similarities. And working through tough stakeholders, working through a difficult challenge, figuring out how to unblock something, figuring out how to work cross-functionally, all of these things that are also very similar across the private sector and government. And so for those of you that do come to the other side and join government, I wouldn't come in with a preconceived notion that you're not a government expert or you don't know the right things, because really they're just doing the work is the thing that needs to be done.
Completely agree with all of that. And I think kind of dovetailing off of that comment, I think the thing I would say is it's important to come in with the right balance of confidence and humility. I work with a lot of former teachers who have a lot more on the ground knowledge of what it is like to be in the classroom than I do. I'm not a former teacher. They have expertise that I do not have. And it is important for me to, one, be really confident in what I bring to the table with my data skills, but two, still listen and ask questions and recognize that as someone who is newer to government and newer to education, there's a lot that I need to learn from my colleagues as well. And we all bring different perspectives to the table, and that is valuable and important.
Awesome. Agree with all of that. And we heard, lots of echoes of that in the talk just earlier with Jen Polka. So I think hopefully the folks are enjoying these talks. So we have a question in the chat for Grace. Was it hard to track improvement on asthma? So after getting great representation on the first round, how did you get data demonstrating improvement?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I really want to stress that part of what made this project so successful is that we didn't ask any of our citizen scientists to change their user behaviors. So if you're not familiar with what the experience is like for a normal person with asthma, you're supposed to keep a paper journal. And what people have found is that usually what happens is right before a doctor's appointment, someone's sitting in the parking lot trying to remember when they use their asthma inhaler and like filling in this paper journal. So instead of putting that burden on the user, we're like, just use your asthma inhaler. You just keep using it. When you need to use it, you use it, and the device would automatically geocode and timestamp when that was occurring. So people who stuck with it because they were like, well, there's a cap, it sits on my medication, I don't have to change my behavior. We were absolutely able to have Propeller Health collect that data. And in fact, part of the program was that we also had respiratory specialists who came and worked with the citizen scientists, the patients, to say, hey, let's start looking at this and figure out what your actual triggers are. And actually, we saw a significant reduction because people were starting to realize I have exercise induced asthma. I have asthma attacks because the humidity is too low in my bedroom when I sleep at night. I have asthma attacks when it's too hot outside and I try and go for a walk. So all of this passive data collection actually resulted in real significant changes. One other one was, I should change what time of day I take my controller medication. Things that they would have not known if they hadn't collected really robust data, but they were able to collect it passively. So patients who stuck with the program, and again, it was very low friction to stick with it, saw about an 80% reduction in their rescue asthma inhaler usage and 2 times increase in asthma-free days.
2 times. Wow. I just think that technology is so amazing. I couldn't even imagine something. I had asthma as a kid and couldn't even imagine. First of all, I've never thought to keep a paper journal. So it's just really, really amazing. And thanks for your answer. So I see another question here for Pooja, but I'm going to kind of open it up to any of you who'd like to answer. Are the government orgs working on your problems and challenges that you've shared about today? Are they currently hiring? And how can folks on this call really practically keep an eye out? Any plug you have for any open roles?
Yeah, I would say to speak to the example I gave, there's the federal role in it, but there's, as I mentioned, like every single state is implementing these critical programs. So I think, and I know that's what this event is here for today, but anyone that's looking at state opportunities that are in either the social services or DHS, or every state will call it a little bit differently, but something that touches social safety net benefits would play in that space. And similarly at the federal level of agencies hiring and opening up digital services teams. And I think there's just a lot of exciting opportunity in the space.
I will definitely take this opportunity to plug that we're hiring as well. If you go to TEA's website, we have a job board that has an up-to-date list of postings, and I'm on a broader data strategy and analytics team that has roles in both data analytics and user-centered technology design. So would love to meet any passionate folks who are interested in state government in Texas.
All right, Grace, anything to add?
Well, I'm actually on a break right now, so I'm no longer with Louisville Metro government, but I do know that city governments are also actively hiring technologists. There are just so many opportunities to do really interesting work that has high impact for the communities you live in.
Thank you. So there's a couple different questions in the chat about folks with specific experience and expertise in education. So I'm curious from all of you, when you were starting to look for government roles and you knew what you had to offer and what you wanted to bring to the table, how did you kind of identify the agencies that you're in or that you ended up in? And how did it feel to apply those skills to each of those?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. I'll say one that I definitely very deeply feel that challenge of it feels very overwhelming to go on USA.gov or, all of these different government job boards that are often kind of hard to interpret. I would say that there has been a movement by at least the federal level, and I'm sure at the state and local level as well, to try to simplify the job postings and make the process look a little bit more close to what you may have experienced in the private sector. So they're out there. Me personally, I have kind of a cheat answer, which is I did not apply to that many jobs because I happened to speak to people. I was like, this is what I have to bring. Where do you suggest I apply? And they're like, okay, apply there. And so I kind of took that path, but maybe the advice in that not that helpful answer is to speak with folks that that are in government and kind of get their advice to help steer you to the right places, and in addition to kind of searching online.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough. I do think that, yes, the job boards can be intimidating, but you should look for those figurative front doors to government. So the fact that tech.gov is doing this event, there are people and roles that were similar to mine before, so chief innovation officer or chief technology officer at all levels of government, who oftentimes view a very important part of their role is to be that front door for government, to help interested parties navigate and to find opportunities. Don't let just the hiring website stop you in your tracks. Take advantage of networks, talk to people. They will be more than delighted to help you navigate.
Completely agree. I definitely lucked into my current role through a mutual former colleague and kind of word of mouth that like this role was in the pipeline before it even hit the job board. And so I think, the more you can build relationships, which you all are doing by attending this event. So I think you're all doing the right thing.
Yes, we're really glad that you all are here, and we are going to have another one of these in October. So definitely sign up for our email list at tech2gov.org. Okay, I have another question about concerns from patients about data management with the for GRACE with the propeller and the pharmaceutical data.
No, of course.
Yeah.
Again, these are fantastic questions. And part of why we had to make sure that this was opt-in, we were incredibly transparent about who had access to data, what they were doing. So while Propeller Health was collecting the data, we had set up established relationships with respiratory specialist providers in our community, so that these were the doctors and clinical nurses who were already working with patients. And so they had that trust. They knew that that's who was going to have access to the data. We, in fact, made it very explicitly clear. I showed aggregated information. I continued to only have completely aggregated and de-identified information. So at no point did local government have PHI in this project. And we made sure to, again, communicate that transparently and make sure that people who were opting in felt comfortable with that. Because I could see someone saying, I don't feel comfortable sharing where I am with even my doctor. It had to be opt-in. And like I said, with really clear and careful HIPAA protection in place.
Excellent. Stephanie, I'll pose this to you. So you came in from private sector before this role you're in now, and someone wants to know, for someone who's early career, do you recommend getting private sector experience before working in government? Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, I think that there's no one right way to do your career. I am very grateful for all that I learned working in the private sector, but I also would never tell anyone, don't go into government right now. I think you can learn a ton either way. So I think it's just about the path that you want to take in your career. And I feel fortunate that I kind of don't feel pigeonholed. I mean, I think data and technology skills are valuable in so many different places, and it's not like you have to pick a lane and stick to it. You can always make that transition to government at any point in your career.
Pooja, do you have anything to add?
No, I would really second that. I think more so than any, early in your career, I think it's really important to be surrounded by a team that can support you. And I think that, and, good mentorship, and you can really find that in any industry, be it government and private sector. So I speaking back to my former self, that is probably the thing that I found most important in my early career, was finding that support in the team where you feel like you vibe and you're working in a culture that you like and feel like you're going to grow in.
Awesome. We're really close to wrapping up here. I would love to hear from you all. What was something that really surprised you when you came in, and what's kind of giving you hope for the future?
I think one thing that surprised me, again, as somebody who had a long career in the private sector, and was involved in civic tech, that's part of how I got into the role with government, is that, as someone who chafed at bureaucracy, that there's definitely very good reasons why bureaucracy exists. Now, that isn't to say that there aren't opportunities for improvement. And I think just hearing about Pooja's talk and Stephanie's talk are concrete examples of when bureaucracy can be improved. But it is there, in fact, to oftentimes protect people and make sure that equity is protected. So I do think for people who are coming in, you might think like, oh, I've got all the answers. It's been a real joy to discover that it's at the intersection, right? So that cross-functional collaboration, leveraging relationships and institutional knowledge, where we come up with the real interesting creative solutions.
I can go next. In terms of what surprised me, I referenced this in my little chat, but I'll say it again, that, I also was new to government when I joined, and I had this idea in my head that, okay, the federal government is the center of a lot of action. And, when I joined, I was really just a good reality check of like, yeah, federal government is important, but so much of the important, like actual on the ground work that touches people's lives is by design handled at the state and local level. A lot of these programs that are maybe federally funded are implemented and at the discretion of states and cities. So I think just really having a healthy understanding of how that dynamic works by design has been good. And I think just seeing the growth of teams that are doing this kind of work at all levels, even in the 2 years since I entered this world has been really heartening, just to see the proliferation and appreciation that, that these kind of skill sets are needed and important across all levels of government.
I'll be quick since I know we're right at time, but I agree with all of that. I think I touched on this, but I thought more of my job going in was going to be having to convince people that data was important and that we need to look at data, and that is not true. I came in and everybody was like, we want to look at data, please help us. And so that was really affirming and wonderful, and I think speaks to kind of the leadership culture that folks above my pay grade have established as well.
Thank you so much. So I do know that we didn't get to all the questions in the chat, and we really appreciate you all being so engaged. I do want to remind you there is a help desk available. There is a booth for that. So if any of your questions, I know we couldn't answer everything, so please feel free to pop in there and ask those folks. And Grace, Pooja, Stephanie, I can't thank you enough. I found it really inspiring, and I'm sure that folks on this call did too. So thanks everybody for attending, and our next event starts in 15 minutes here. So come on back for a leadership panel. We have the Chief Information Officer of the City of Atlanta, Jason Sankey. We have Michael Hendricks from the Office of the Governor's Office in Tennessee, And we have the executive director of the digital service of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Ariane Gallagher. So thank you so much to the three of you again, and hope everybody has a great day.